Thank you everybody for joining us today for our industry update. As always, please keep your lines muted and use the chat feature only if you have questions. At the end, Melissa and John will address these. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to John.
Good morning, all of you, and welcome to today's webinar. As a reminder, this webinar is designed for the use and benefit of our restaurant, hotel, travel and tourism partners and members and other friends of PRLA. It is not a press designed webinar. We are happy to take any and all press inquiries. We do take any and all inquiries, but if you're with the press today, please disconnect because this event is off the record. Also want to point out that the webinar is sponsored by Food Shelter, a communications agency supporting and elevating the hospitality and real estate industries. Food and shelter are fundamental elements needed to thrive, and food shelter surpasses fundamentals and helps businesses thrive in the marketplace. Through candid counsel, creative perspectives, news, images, anecdotes, and experiences, Food Shelter creates engaging, measurable campaigns to reach targeted audiences and communities in unexpected ways. Food Shelter is a partner with PRLA, leading media relations and crisis communications on behalf of the hospitality industry. Food Shelter has been feeding minds and building brands since 2005. A little bit out of character for this call today because I may have to leave a bit early for some press interviews. I wanted to talk about just a quick overview of 2513, which Melissa's going to give you the details of. Obviously, it's a very disappointing day for the restaurant, hotel, and venues industry, and the 2513 veto was sustained yesterday based on 12 Democratic representatives who voted for the legislation originally, but flipped their votes and voted against it. I'm a business person. I've been in business for over 40 years prior to coming to PRLA, like many of you. And in business, we focus on results, not efforts. But it would be an error for me not to recognize the efforts of the thousands and thousands of restaurateurs, other associations, hospitality workers, hotel workers, destination marketing organizations, all quarterbacked by Melissa Bova, our excellent VP of Government Affairs, one of the best, if not the best in the state, to get so close to fixing the industry and providing a lifeline of survival for it, to miss only by 2 votes. So while the results, at least as of this moment, are not there, the efforts need to be recognized because there was truly every corner of the state. We had people working this throughout the weekend. We were the victim of some misinformation that was disseminated over the weekend about 2513, and we were the victim of some other tactics. But that said, we cannot discount the efforts that everyone made to get 2513 passed handily in both the House and the Senate, and an override so close to happening yesterday. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Bova to take it from here. Melissa, it's all yours.
Hey everyone, I didn't get too creative with the background today, but I felt like I had to do something. But I feel like this kind of demonstrates how everybody's feeling today. We're going to go through federal. I'm going to go into 2513. I'm going to be honest about the conversations that I've had and what I'm hearing. And of course, I know you are all on this call because you want to know where we go from here. And I'm going to speak to that as well. So with that, let's go through federal. I mean, the past 3 weeks, it's really been the same where I've said there's gridlock. And while there is a drive now, it seems from the Trump administration and the House to put together a $2 trillion package. The Senate is basically saying, no, thank you. We would like to elect or put into the Supreme Court a new justice more than we actually want to save businesses or the industry or save the economy right now. And that is essentially what Mitch McConnell stated yesterday. So he basically said that Trump and the House can do what they want, and he might put it up for a vote, but he also probably won't do that before the election. So it's becoming more and more obvious at the federal and the state level that politics are at play here. But there is going to be another push, another attempt to get a $2 trillion package together. The hope is that it will include those specific recoveries, if nothing else. And I know many of you have talked to your congressional delegation, Everybody's saying that the P3 is going to get another round, and those who weren't eligible initially for the P3 is going to be able to draw on it. I think if we can at minimum get that, I think that's something, because there are unused funds as it pertains to the P3. But there will be a push for a $2 trillion package. The concern is that if the House moves something and the Senate comes back after the election, depending on how the election goes, there might not be a push to do anything in what we call the lame duck session, at least at Congress. So everything's up in the air. There will be a push. We aren't sure what's going to be included in that bill, so don't ask me. We don't have a breakdown yet regarding any of those conversations that are being had, but we should get more information today, and we will get that out to all of you as soon as we have it. And if we think there's an opportunity to engage, we will absolutely let you know, because now it is more obvious than ever that we're going to need that financial assistance to get us through the winter. Let's get into the reason you're all here today. We took a run at it yesterday, and I'm going to give you some background of where we are for House Bill 2513. And I will talk, there's a question about some of the misinformation that was put out there. I'm a little prideful about 2513 because I helped write the bill. And the bill in and of itself, very specifically, and many of you have heard me talk about legislation, says that if it is passed, restaurants and event centers shall operate at 50% capacity. So we have to be allowed to operate at 50%. That was the entire premise of the bill. We have to be allowed to operate at 50. Then the second section of the bill says that we may operate at higher than 50% if CDC guidelines and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania permit us to do so. And with that, we added that barriers can be used, because we all know that none of you are going to be able to operate at more than 50% unless you can have barriers. So we shall be able to operate at 50%. We may go higher if the Commonwealth permits us. So if a bill is passed that lets us go higher, or Governor Wolf or Secretary Levine say we can go higher. They have been saying to the media that the bill would allow us to operate at 100% as long as we used barriers. And that is not what's in the bill. That's not even the intent of the bill, but that is what's being put out there. And I can tell you that it's really a lot of, we interpret it one way, one lawyer interprets it one way, their lawyer interpreted it another. So that we could operate at 100% was never the intent of the bill. It's not in the bill. We can only go above 50 with permission, but that was, you can't find a media outlet that didn't copy and paste that from the governor's veto statement on Friday that stated that. So I wanted to clarify what that misinformation is that's out there. And like I said, I helped write the bill, so I can tell you that our intent or the meaning of the bill was never to go above 50 unless the governor or the secretary said we could. The governor vetoed the bill on Friday. If you read the veto message, you probably were shaking with anger, like all of us at the PRLA were. And of course, with the House and Senate coming back to session on Monday, the assumption from all of you, and of course from PRLA, was that a veto override would happen immediately. So we asked you to engage, and all of you did. I will tell you this, I have never been so proud of the representation and the fight you all put up. And I think there was an ask and a push to not run an override until after the election. I think that would have been the wrong move. I think our momentum right now was to do the override when there's an election ahead of us. And quite honestly, depending how the election goes, I think we would have lost votes. So there was a push by us to ask them to move the bill. There was pushback from both sides of the aisle that were concerned about people putting up a vote, an override vote, especially when they lost on the sports bill. But our argument, of course, was you all came back especially to do an override on the sports bill. This industry can't wait until after the election for an override vote. The governor started making calls over the course of the weekend, and the arguments, he was not arguing against the bill on the merits. They were holding things over legislators' heads to keep them in line and not support the veto. So we knew going into this vote that it was going to be close. And going into this vote, I said it very clearly. I said, whether we win or lose, our members deserve to know who was there for them. And I thought my whip count had us at 135. We were short by 2. Over the weekend, I had us at 134. I got us to 135. And then, of course, you can see here that when it came down, the decision wasn't made until Tuesday, late afternoon. Many of you didn't even know the vote was going up. That was done purposefully to try and move it quickly. And we lost, of course, by 2 votes. We needed 135, we got 133. You can see on the list here, the 12, we call them the flippers. I would use other words, but this is a public webinar, so I won't. But these are the people who voted for the bill when it came up for the vote in the House, and then they flipped their vote as it pertained to the override. Some of these I was surprised at, and some of you are probably see some of those names and also are surprised at some of those people who flipped. But that's where we are. In terms of legislatively, there will not be another push for we could do an override vote every day for the next 3 months if we wanted to. So just because an override vote fails doesn't mean that you can't run it again. They could run it as many times as they want. Does it make sense to do that right now? Probably not. So for right now, going into the election, there's not going to be any legislative action from the legislature. This is their last day of session before the election, and then we'll determine where they go from there. The question that I'll play a drinking game to if you went through my email is what's next? This is not a vote, as I've said many times, that this industry is going to forget or forgive. This was not us asking to open fully. This was asking for a chance to survive. And we saw from this vote who was with us and who wasn't. So we are going to be asking moving forward, we're going to update the graphics and supply all of you with those social media graphics that one, you're thanking those people who put up the vote. And I'm going to tell you why you need to do that. Also, we have a graphic that allows you to post to specifically recognize any of those people, even beyond the 12, any of the people who didn't vote for the override. An election is coming, and this industry needs to engage, and this industry needs to support those people that stood up for us, and this industry needs to not support those people who didn't. There is no excuse that we are going to accept for somebody who says, I didn't vote for the bill, but I'm going to go to the governor and ask him to change his mind. We have been asking for that for months. So this is something that we're going to provide you all with the information that you need, one, to recognize those who are with us again and recognize those who were not publicly. And then we're going to be asking you to engage a little bit more, if you're comfortable, on the election front by supporting those people who are with us. The Democrats, we anticipate, will be targeting our yes votes and sending out mailers saying that the people who voted for this override don't care about the public health and safety of the citizens of Pennsylvania, and they're going to use it as a political pundit. And I'm not saying this as a Democrat versus Republican situation. I'm just telling you that we're 2 weeks from the election and this is what they're going to do. So we need to rise up as an industry and support those who were with us and fight for those that were with us. That is going to be our immediate next steps, because we don't stand a chance in November after the election unless we get those people who are with us reelected and make sure those who weren't are recognized as not being with the industry. So that's going to be our most immediate next steps. I can tell you this, and I always take it with a grain of salt. I think a lot of those Democrats, which we're asking you to continue to keep the pressure on, are going back to the governor and saying, I put up that vote for you. Now you need to change something because my restaurants aren't going to make it. And the hope is that he moves in response to that. I would have liked him to move before the vote yesterday. But there is going to be that pressure. I know some of our members that had some legislators enter their restaurant last night after the vote. Some Democrats who voted against us made it very clear the position that we are in. So this is not an end to the pressure that we're going to be putting on this governor. This isn't going to stop that. It's just going to stop a legislative push, at least for the next 2 weeks. So like I said, we will be getting that information out to all of you to start putting up this afternoon. As I mentioned, for session, they still have $1.3 billion in CARES Act money that they need to spend before the end of the year. So they're going to have to come back at some point to balance out the budget and spend those funds. So we will be back in November after the election, depending on how the election goes, to work through all of that. But this is the last day of session. A lot of bills are not going to get across the finish line because everybody, as you all know, at the end of a session, people want to go home and campaign. So they will be exiting today until after the election, and then we'll reassess our priorities and what we're pushing for from here. I can tell you that there are some people that didn't want to put up that vote yesterday, Republicans and Democrats, and they feel that we put them in a bad position. I think that yesterday showed, again, who was with us and who wasn't. I think it shows all of you who was with us and who wasn't. And I think that this is the perfect opportunity for us as an industry to respond appropriately. We are, or we will be again, the second largest industry. We need to act. And that's supporting those Democrats who were with us and those Republicans that were with us. So that's kind of where we are. I will answer specific questions as we go through this. I have been asked if we are considering a rally. That's a conversation that John and I and the officers have not had yet. Again, at this point, we got to figure out, is that going to move the needle, or is it more of an opportunity for us to all just to get together and scream a little bit? And I haven't decided what that is going to be. But in terms of a rally, that's a conversation that we are going to have once again internally at PRLA. Next slide. So locally, things, Philadelphia is hopping. Philadelphia has some bills as it pertains to hotel operations that we're seeing pop up throughout the country. If you are a hotel in Philadelphia or you are a large venue in Philadelphia, these bills do impact you. They range from requiring you to hire back employees you laid off in order of seniority. So it basically dictates how you bring people back to work during the COVID crisis. Also, there's a bill that requires notice and keeping all employees that are at a hotel, they have to stay employed if the hotel is sold to another business. So it's a lot of labor stuff that we're seeing in the city of Philadelphia. There's also some protections for seasonal workers as well. And PRLA is engaged in working through all of that with City Council. There's a bill that will be introduced tomorrow in City Council specifically for eviction protection for restaurants within the city of Philadelphia. So that's going to be a discussion point that we have. There is a bill in Philadelphia that passed that protects small businesses with less than 100 employees. A lot of our restaurants in Philadelphia do have more than 100 employees, and we want to make sure they're protected as well. The entire industry is suffering right now. So there will be a restaurant-specific hotel or restaurant bill as it pertains to evictions and fees being applied by landlords during the COVID crisis. And there's also, as I mentioned before, legislation that's being drafted as it pertains to use and occupancy tax in Philadelphia and trying to provide some relief to businesses there. So we are working through all of those locally in Philadelphia. And of course, we're keeping an eye of what's going on in Allegheny County. Allegheny County is debating a paid sick leave bill. PRLA did testify, not in opposition, but essentially said anything that is passed that's another mandate on business at a time when our industry is wrecked is probably not a good idea. And we're continuing to articulate that to members of Allegheny County Council, but that's something that we are engaged with as well. Mitigation. So things have been frustrating. And you all probably have seen that the numbers have increased. And I want everybody to take that with a grain of salt, because we're certainly seeing the Secretary of Health. You could have played a drinking game on Monday to her press conference with as many times as she tried to blame restaurants and hospitality for the increase in cases, which of course is not true. Testing has increased. We now are doing in Pennsylvania over 200,000 tests every day. So with the number of tests, there are an increased number of positive cases. So you really have to look at what the percentage of positivity is. We're still below 5%. Yes, our rates are increasing. Yes, it's something to watch. But the increased numbers saying that they're so high are actually lower than where they were when we hit our peak back in May. There's also data released as it pertains to contact tracing in restaurants, and this was in our update earlier this week. One of the data points from the Department of Health was that 50% of COVID cases came from restaurants. Well, that was 50% of people who responded to contact tracing and responded specifically to contact tracing. So in the end, of the 243, it accounted to only 3% of cases saying that they visited a restaurant. It was not tied back to a restaurant specifically. Just yesterday, Health Commissioner Farley in Philadelphia said that there are no COVID cases that they have tied to restaurants, that it is gatherings, people gathering in their homes, which, as we all know, they're doing because they can't go to restaurants. Further to that point, over 400 of those contact tracers, people said that they were at a gathering. So there's actually more spread of COVID in those unregulated places than there are within our industry in and of itself. Unfortunately, as we've seen, and as John has stated so much when he's testified in the past, science and data doesn't seem to be the basis of decision making that's coming from this administration. We do not expect any changes right now to our industry, but I think we all need to recognize that we are a target, and this administration has targeted us as it pertains to mitigation requirements. And we're certainly seeing full shutdowns in Europe that, of course, the United States is looking at very carefully. So I can't say that we are going to be okay as we go through the winter. I think that it's going to need to be an opportunity where we stand up again if once again we are targeted, and we're going to provide you all the tools. It can't just be PRLA speaking out. It's going to need to be all of you engaging on this. But I can't promise that there isn't going to be an attempt to shut us down again, because quite honestly, this administration has made unilateral changes without any basis behind them. So I can't say that they won't do that again. And I'm sorry that I'm not able to do that. I will say just today, you all, if you're a licensee, you received an email from the LCB. They did update their guidance as it pertains to operating with the new event standards. I have not read through it yet, but it seems to pretty much be verbatim to what was in the updated mitigation FAQ from the Secretary of Health, but the LCB has updated its guidance. To that end, enforcement has increased. Every day, John and I and members of the PRLA are getting calls that LCE and Department of Ag are coming in regularly and checking and doing enforcement. Of course, they said if you sign the certification, there wouldn't be an increase in enforcement. We're certainly not seeing that. To that end, I know the question of the week is that Taste of Sicily court ruling that happened last week, where a judge ruled that the Department of Ag enforcement for Taste of Sicily was not enforceable, that as it relates to the disease and prevention law, there actually needs to be a disease in the facility, and Department of Ag trying to shut a restaurant down if a disease is not present is not actually legal. We are now in a gray area for Department of Ag. Unfortunately, this lawsuit had nothing to do with LCE enforcement. So there is still enforcement from LCE. Because you have a liquor license and licenses are more regulated than other licenses, LCE does have more ability to fine and implement enforcement as it pertains to licensees. So please do not open up 100% thinking that you're all in the all clear and that you won't be cited or you won't go before an ALJ as it pertains to your liquor license until we can get some clarification. As of right now, the LCE is still enforcing, and they've all probably been in your establishments, and you're probably well aware that they are continuing to enforce. I think, is there yes. So also local and county mitigation. Allegheny County continues to be aligned with the state. That is unchanged. In Philadelphia, they did update last week. We went over this in the webinar last week. Their guidance as it pertains to events, it's essentially their guidance is that you cannot have events. But Philadelphia is, as I said, closely monitoring their increase in cases. It was helpful to hear Commissioner Farley say that, restaurants were not the cause of the spread of COVID, at least in Philadelphia. But we're also concerned about shutdowns in terms of Philadelphia as case counts increase. And I think with that, we'll go through upcoming webinars and then I'll start going through questions.
Okay, great. So tomorrow we are going to be we are promoting a webinar by RSI on cost of goods 101. So they are going to be talking about whys and best practices for understanding proper accounting of your cost of goods. Please join us tomorrow on that. On Monday, there will be a panel that is being convened in the Philadelphia area. They're going to be talking about the restaurant industry, the ever-changing landscape, and some individuals will be talking about past and future challenges. So please join us on Monday for that. Melissa will be back, of course, on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, we do have a group that's going to be talking to you. It's Ask the Experts. They're going to be talking about they're going to be talking about barriers in your restaurant and guards for restaurants and hotels. how they work, what you could be looking at, and they are a local company in Bensalem, so they definitely will be around to talk to you more about it, the specifics on it. And HNLA will be having some government affairs updates and a forum coming up this week. So please join our national organization for their webinars. Next page. Again, we're always having training going on. Our full StarSafe schedule is up on our website. Please go to classes. Please join us. We are doing social distancing and making sure that everybody is safe. And certification is still important in your restaurant, so you want to make sure you keep that up to date. We have come up with some virtual experiences for our schools and do have a flyer that we're going to be putting out to people that are interested in providing this. It takes about 5 to 15 minutes of your time to record something and help us with these students and their programs and keeping them connected with our industry for when they come out in the spring for getting ready to work for you. And then, as always, our scholarship program is open until March. So please, if you have anybody that you know is pursuing their education at the end of the year, after they leave school, please have them look into this for additional funding for them. I think we're probably on to questions. Doesn't look that bad today.
Everyone feels like I do right now. I just need a nap, I think, at this point. I did answer the misinformation piece. There's a question, was there a reason why the House waited until end of day yesterday to vote for the override when on Monday they voted on things like declaring October 4th, 2020 as Truck Driver Appreciation Day? Maggie, that is a good question. There was political pressure that was put on by the Wolf administration across both aisles on Republicans and Democrats. And the vote that was put up yesterday, when it finally was put up, was not done without penalty. This was not, and I know the governor thinks he's doing the right thing, but there is a lot of strong arming that took place over the course of the weekend and yesterday. And there were a lot of valid concerns from the House leadership about running an override bill and what the repercussions would be from an administration that doesn't seem to flinch from putting repercussions on those who don't do what they're told. So Monday was us pushing for it. And then even on Tuesday, the Republicans did caucus. And from my understanding is that caucus said, this is the right thing to do. We need to do it. And we thank them for standing up and doing that. But the reason was to give it as much time for them to negotiate through things and make sure that it was worth the political repercussions of doing so, which they did, which is why we all need, even though we lost by 2 votes, we all need to recognize the fact that they did stand up for us. I think, Bob, you're referring to maybe the governor or maybe some of those, my affectionately called flippers, lies and liar. Yeah, Maligari was one. Scott and I talked on social media as well. Maligari was one who flipped. And I think that was one that surprised a lot of people. And he did call me this morning. So, so Scott, yes, that was a surprise. Yeah, and the governor has put you all in this position. And I think there needs to be recognition that that's what he did. Why didn't they want to put up the vote? My understanding is that there are funds that can go to specific legislative districts that the governor was threatening would not be released, funds that are important to specific legislative districts. And that's why I think we lost some votes. And I think that's why there was hope that they could negotiate something with the governor. But like I said, I think we would have had less of a chance if we waited till after the election. But there were, like I say, you have all experienced this week what my job is more than I want it to be, which is political and politics and nasty. And that's unfortunately what happened this week. And I don't know how to say it any other way. I think we did post the voting roll call. His next 90-day disaster comes out at the end of November. Yes, Bob, I think that it does. But as we all know, he just keeps on renewing it. So essentially it can go on in perpetuity, according to the governor. So there is going to be a push to change all of that going into next year in the election. But But yes, we just expect him to renew. Are any of the flippers up for re-election on Tuesday? All of the flippers are up for re-election on Tuesday. Now, some of them don't have races that are close. Some of them do. But yes, every member of the House is up on November 3rd. Up again, Scott mentioned that as well. Let's see. Yes, gatherings and restaurants are only one of the places that folks have gone. They've also gone to a grocery store, a gas station, etc. Yes, and that's something that we should keep in mind. The contact tracing that's being done isn't very great. I mean, they're specifically saying, did you go to a restaurant? Yes or no? Did you go to any other business? So basically, we're being targeted specifically in contact tracing, and then everybody else, every other 30 places that they went in those 2 weeks that they could have gotten COVID is bundled into this general business category. So it's frustrating. I mean, I think we all agree to that. You all have made a lot of investments in your business. You're trying to survive. And there seems to still be a push to try and target our industry specifically as it pertains to mitigation and the spread of COVID. And let's see, I don't know if anybody has posted the LCB guidance. Hold on, I can post it right now. And I guess I'll be posting it another time if somebody already did. Sorry, let me go back to where I was now that I've messed up my whole line. In regards to the LCB updated guidance, you just mentioned it applies that hotel licenses need to self-certify as well. If you are a hotel and your restaurant is serving the public, you need to self-certify. The self-certification only applies to 50%, not rooms. So if you are a hotel with a restaurant and you want to increase your restaurant capacity to 50%, then you do need to self-certify. It does not impact, the self-certification is for 50%, not for events. Hotel lobbies who serve a complimentary breakfast at risk to getting inspected. Yes, anybody that is serving food or has a license via Department of Ag or a liquor license is subject to inspection at any time. So you do need to enforce the social distancing, the wearing of masks, all of that. I'm hearing rumors that several athletic teams, NFL, college football, are having hotel events, i.e. team meals in excess of hotel capacity limits. I guess the governor doesn't care. Also, as someone in the event industry, I'm very aware of selected venues that are not following the guest count guidelines. We have been going through this now we're going to enter our 7th month soon. So people are frustrated, and people, as we said, are becoming a little complacent because they've had to follow these strict guidelines for months. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what the rules are. And if somebody's breaking the rules, they take a risk when they do it. But I can't, at this point, I don't think John or I are going to say, yes, you can ignore all of the rules and regulations, because we can't say that, because there could be repercussions to that end for all of you in terms of enforcement. But yes, people are tired. People are sick of this. They know they can operate safely. And I think we're seeing some of that. And I know specifically some of these NFL teams have put on a lot of pressure on some of these large or hotel venues to allow them to have that ability. So it's probably a calculated risk on their part. There's a question about the CARES Act money, and Republicans are holding up the appropriation of CARES money. I think I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. There is over $1 billion in unspent CARES money that has not been allocated yet. We need the legislature to do it. Technically, they have to do it before the end of this year. They have to do it by December 30th. They have not allocated it yet. Primarily because, as I mentioned, they are waiting and hoping and wishing and praying that the government, the federal government, will let them use it to balance the budget. With that being said, I think all of you that are on this call right now recognize the fact that the Democratic package that was put out there is $100 million for our industry. As I joked before, that means every restaurant gets $5. It's a grant program isn't going to save this industry. Even if they took the 1.3 billion and said all of it goes to hospitality, it's not going to save this industry. So while it could help, and while we're looking at other avenues to help you, it's not going to save you. So I do get a little frustrated when people are like, we have CARES Act money, we can use that to help you get through it, because it's not going to save us. And that's why we need the ability to operate. And John and I have talked in the past, if you do math on the back of a sheet of paper with how much this industry brings in revenue, which is about $28 billion a year, 24,000 locations, even if half of them are suffering, and we tried to make them whole for 6 months, we're looking at a $5 to $6 billion grant. It's just not going to happen. And that's just for making them whole for 6 months. So the CARES Act money is going to help, and we're focusing on a grant program. It's not going to save everybody. And I think that when people say that that money is going to be what gets us through it, I think we need to call out that that's not true. Bob emailed U.S. Attorney Barr last night. There's more specificity in gatherings. I'm not sure if that's a question, Allison. And then John, everybody wants you to do a TV commercial, so we'll have to work on that. Everyone's going to pitch in to get you on TV, John.
You know, I'll do whatever I need to do, although they say I have a face for radio, but that's okay.
Rory, like I said, we're still talking. John and I haven't talked about a rally yet in the Capitol. Like I said, at this point, I'm kind of like, doesn't hurt. But they're not going to be in Harrisburg after today. So I think we kind of need to think through that as well. Having a rally when nobody's here probably isn't going to make that much of a difference. I don't hate the idea of doing things locally. I know some of our friends in the Lehigh Valley did an event on Monday. I don't hate the idea with the election coming up, doing events locally in that scenario. So I think that's something that we can talk through with everybody. I just need to put some thought into it of how that would work. But I think local is going to be the way to go now in terms of pressure. And I'm sorry I'm not more uplifting. I can tell you yesterday was hard, and I'm not going to cry again because I did that a lot in the last 24 hours, but we're not done fighting. We're not going to stop. So see, I'm going to start. So please don't stop either, and stay with us, and we will get through this. We will get through it. And I promise John and I aren't going to stop. PRLA isn't going to stop. So with that, I'm going to turn off my video.
Thank you, Melissa. And thanks again to all of you and everyone across the state that's really been there throughout this ordeal. And as Melissa said, you know Melissa well enough, she's a fighter, so we will all be there to do whatever we need to do. Hope, do you want to wrap it up?
Definitely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As always, this is recorded. We will send this out to you, and we'll have it posted on our website, and we'll be getting more information out on the daily update today on how you can rally, keep rallying for your industry. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.